This is the Investor Connect podcast program. I'm Hall T. Martin. I'm the host of this show in which we interview angel investors, venture capital, family offices, private equity, and many other investors for early stage and growth companies. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hello, this is Hall Martin with Investor Connect. Today I'm here with Andrew Bilinsky, co-founder and CEO of Lensabl. 5 years ago, Lensabl pioneered the concept of lens replacement. Before that, when someone with prescription glasses needed to replace their lenses, they typically had to visit a store and spend hundreds of dollars to buy new frames with their new lenses. Lensabl gave them a new option: keep your frames and they will just replace your lenses. Today, they have helped over 100,000 customers streamline their vision care and save over $5 million. Andrew, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Great to be chatting with you, and excited to get into it.
Great. So, what was your background before you co-founded Lensabl?
So, I've been a serial entrepreneur. I would say probably my whole life. Dating back to kind of the lemonade stand concept that people always chat about, but I truly did have a lemonade stand when I was a child. But kind of previous to Lensabl, I had a side business that turned into a real business in the optical space, which I'll tell you about in a second. But kind of coming out of college, I worked in the digital group kind of as an internal consultant at Live Nation, on the digital side. From there, I actually kind of got into the startup world really early on in a company called Outlook, which was a online flash sale e-commerce business that a couple of years after I had joined got acquired by Nordstrom. And from there, joined a company called Beachmint, which was in the subscription commerce space. Here in Los Angeles, basically built brands with celebrities and influencers, and then kind of sold them in a of the month club, similar to Shoe Dazzle concept. From there, actually joined the Accelerator Science based out of Santa Monica, California, that was kind of famous for seeding Dollar Shave Club. But I had built out a mobile advertising business with them called Chirp Ads. And so, a variety of different types of businesses, but kind of along the way, I started a side project with my current co-founder today that was really, the idea was kind of to make and design and manufacture glasses and then sell them direct to consumer online. Initially, we were just going to do sunglasses. And so the kind of Warby Parker concept came secondary for us. But this was about 2011, 2012. And frankly, that's when Warby was, it just happened to be similar, coincidentally similar timing to them gaining lots of notoriety. And so we kind of thought that was an interesting concept to go after. The problem was we didn't know the prescription side of the business. So we really, as kind of two young kids, we just researched and taught ourselves and met with optometrist friends and family that had insights into it. And, basically over a course of about 6 months, really figured out the kind of supply chain as it relates to prescription lenses and how to really bring that offering to our frame website. And, basically ran that for about 4.5 years. The latter two were, almost a little bit more full-time. And really over the course of running that business is when we had a fairly successful business, but, I think as you are entering, the frame space, it's very saturated, right? The contact lens space, very saturated. We kind of just built an expertise, if you will, around the prescription lens as a standalone product, and kind of how that kind of meets the rest of the industry and why customers might, need lenses as a standalone product, or how we might be able to make their lives a little bit easier. And kind of throughout that business is really where we conceptualized the first, idea for Lensabl, which was, as you mentioned before, kind of the first of its kind online lens replacement service.
Well, great. So let's talk about the sector itself. How do you see the Lensabl industry evolving, or the eyewear industry evolving? Where do you think it's going?
Yeah, so it's definitely, while all industries are really kind of going through a digital transformation, I would say many are far more advanced than the vision care industry. Just actually saw a stat earlier today that of materials purchased, in vision care, so frames, lenses, contacts, 25.4% done via e-commerce in 2020, which is an 80+% increase, I believe, from what the penetration previously had been. And of course, that makes sense with the pandemic and, the kind of need for individuals who needed new contacts or needed new lenses, frames, to go online, because the traditional, optical retailers they had gone to no longer either existed or were open for short periods of time. But with that said, I think, you've definitely seen with Warby really kind of being the pioneer in the space and growing an incredibly sizable operation that said, there really is no requirement to actually go in store or in doctor's office to purchase frames any longer. It is possible for us to kind of manufacture, design a super high quality frame with prescription lenses at a really, affordable price point, and sell that to you through a website. So that was, dating back almost a decade at this point. And, the industry has slowly, but, kind of picking up more near term, really started to kind of take part of that digital transformation of customer buying behavior. And so, I'd say at this point, buying contact lenses should primarily be an online process. Frankly, the reason for that is because individuals are buying contact brands or products that are specifically stated on their prescription. And, an online or an offline vendor is frankly selling the exact same product. But really, I think where we kind of came into play as it related to Lensabl was we were seeing actually the kind of frame industry, and this didn't only mean prescription frames, but sunglasses and and all different safety glasses, things like that, we're really starting to pick up on the Amazons of the world, on a lot of the large online retailers. And, as we looked at the prescription space and how individuals who were buying on those platforms might need prescription lenses and how they'd get them, the process really always went back to, well, they'd have to go to an optometrist or they'd have to take them to a store. And we really felt like that was at least one of the really broken processes. As frames were now being purchased further online, there should have been a way to get prescription lenses online. That was kind of one concept. And, secondarily, the idea that really every time, or just kind of traditional behavior, every time your prescription changed or your lenses scratched or cracked, it almost required you to kind of go back to a store and then buy a frame and new lenses. And, we all, I think, know how inflated some of the prices at physical retail could be. And so, I think that's kind of where Lensabl saw, an opportunity to bridge this concept of, well, individuals are now more comfortable purchasing frames online. And so, we should have a solution that, kind of lend itself to the lens side of things too, whether they wanted to relens, an existing frame or they wanted to buy a new frame from an online vendor and then kind of send it over to us. What you've seen in the last few years is really the kind of evolution of this digital transformation, not just for purchasing products, but also for services. And I think, the one that everybody kind of thinks about is telehealth, which is, has come to the kind of vision care world primarily over the last 12 months. But really, when you look at some online destinations, Lensabl is, I believe, kind of heralding this concept of really emulating that in-store experience as best as possible. A lot of the emulations exist in the digital world now. And what I mean by that is one kind of pretty simple concept of virtual try-on. I would say that one of the best reasons to kind of go into the store to purchase frames is because you actually get to feel them, touch them, try them on, and see how they look on you, which, of course, for, a facial accessory is very important. 5 years ago, virtual try-on wasn't a thing. Today, there are a variety of different virtual try-on capabilities that a variety of different vendors have. And so, that's just kind of one concept. But, just to talk a little bit more about ourselves, Lensabl does offer actually an online vision test. It is a renewal of an expired prescription. We can't yet, it is not yet FDA approved or FDA listed to do a refraction, which would actually, read your eyes. And if you did, be able to dispense you a prescription if your vision had changed from your previous. That does not yet exist, but there is the ability now, just in 5 to 10 minutes through computer and smartphone through Lensabl.com, to actually get a updated prescription if you have an expired one, assuming your vision hasn't changed. And so a huge new feature and opportunity for individuals to save a lot of the friction and time and cost that was associated with going back in to re-up their prescription, even if their vision had not changed, right? Just to purchase contacts or just to purchase glasses. And then a couple other really cool, things that we do that I think lend themselves to this digital transformation of vision care. We have a really cool kind of face shape finder on the site. So, frame shape finder. So again, you'd go into a retail store or a doctor's office, and they'd be able to kind of guide you to certain frames that might fit your face better, because that's that can be done in person. We can actually now do that online. So we can actually take a screenshot of your face, and then, have the diagram of that, be able to measure it through some our web application, and then recommend you frames that might fit your face shape and size. Something super cool, but kind of emulates that kind of salesperson experience that you used to have in store. And then finally, a very new one for us, which I'm super excited about. We actually did just release our first ever app, iOS and Android app, and it's called the Lensabl Prescription Reader app. And what it does is it actually enables an individual who has a pair of lenses that work for them, but might not be able to locate their prescription, may not know the measurements off the top of their head, but wants to make a purchase for a new set of glasses or a new set of lenses, rather than having to track down their doctor or the retail store that they got their prescription at however long ago. They can actually download our app free of charge. They can scan the back of their existing lenses, and we will, to the degree that your prescription falls within the range, we'll actually spit out the measurements of your lenses into a prescription form that enables you to use it to make another purchase. So I kind of give you this detail on really all the things that we've been able to do to show that it truly is an industry that is transforming digitally. Post-pandemic, we believe that the e-commerce numbers and vision care materials are going to continue to increase largely. The penetration is there. Customers are exploring and getting comfortable with making these purchases online, because not only do the products exist in an affordable and kind of simple e-commerce experience, but a lot of the features or functions that you used to go to a doctor's office or a retail store to do have now been, built in really, really cool experiences online.
Great. Sound like it's moving online very quickly, and that's great to see. What's your advice for people investing in this space? What do you tell them to do before they write a check here?
Yeah, I might be a little bit biased because I live and breathe this space. But the unfortunate fact is that more than 2/3 of American adults today have corrective vision. And I think, what we're seeing with young children and kind of how prominent or prevalent, iPads and iPhones are with children kind of staring really close to screens. Vision correction is something that is going to be required for many, many people for a very long time. And really, what that kind of lends itself to is a massive total addressable market, just globally, absolutely, but just here in the United States. So I think that it is an industry that has been slow to transform to modern day. There's a lot of kind of different players with different agendas in the industry, right? You have the insurance companies, you have the doctors, you've got the manufacturers of the products, and a lot of the new disruptors, and kind of all are attempting to kind of pull from a piece of the pie. But with that said, the pie is massive. And so I believe that there should be far more interest in this industry than from an investment perspective than there really has been. And I believe that the next decade, as the kind of digital transformation picks up, you're going to see a lot of new startups, a lot of new concepts, a lot of new brands and products that emerge, and probably a lot of venture money that is coming into this space. I think it is important for an investor investing in vision care to not necessarily have had to wear glasses, but definitely helps, right? To have experienced some of the traditional pain points that really are, cemented in consumers' minds. Again, around pricing of product, around experience going to the doctor's office, and a lot of what should be able and now can be done digitally that had not been able to be done before. And so I'd say, it's not a requirement, but absolutely, a number of the investors on our cap table got excited about us because they truly had experiences with the problem that we were solving for, one of the problems that we were solving for. And it's allowed them to be far more helpful to us along the way, both from a strategy and advice and feedback perspective, but also, from connecting us and introducing us to relevant individuals and, in the space that could be helpful.
So how do you sell this new market to investors, especially if they don't have familiarity with the new trends or the use of it?
Yeah, I think the fortunate part for us is that there's a lot, at least two out of three, adults in the U.S. have had some experience with this, and so it's not terribly difficult for us to find investors that may have had experiences that we're building fixes for. I would say it's also an industry, though, and I think this is kind of where investors need to be sold. It's an industry that is largely dominated by some very, very significant businesses, by a few. You have Essilor Luxottica, you have VSP, you have National Vision. and a number of additional competitors, some of which are large public companies, some of which are just very large private companies. And so I've definitely run into some hesitation, some apprehension from investors about entering, from an investment perspective, entering the space that there are massive conglomerates that should be able to compete with any new company very easily. Without going too far down why we believe that that's not, a major risk factor, I think that, we've had to kind of continue to innovate on our idea. So just for kind of some more context, we launched Lensabl in 2017 as the first of its kind online lens replacement service, right? Our business was selling lenses. We built a beautiful e-commerce experience, a beautiful set of packaging, but primarily the idea is that if you have a frame that needs new lenses, you can select, and Lensabl has probably the widest variety of custom lens options, both online or offline, really any vendor here in the US. And that's because we have a really, really great operational partner, one of the largest lens manufacturers and optical lab owners in the world. But frankly, that was our core business. And that was brand new. We had kind of created that concept. Today, fast forward 4 years, you've seen some big players, 1-800-Contacts build a competitive solution to us. And a handful of other smaller players have now joined the ranks. But kind of selling a new concept is hard no matter what industry you're in, right? And so it took us a fair amount of time to really be able to kind of get product market fit there and to get investors comfortable. I think fortunately for us along the way in doing that, our idea, or our vision, and there are many puns in my world, as I'm sure you can imagine, but our vision had really expanded. And it expanded because we spent a lot of time in optical retail stores doing research, just like any, kind of new up and coming companies would that are looking to compete with some incumbents. And, we just noticed a lot of issues and a lot of friction around the consumer purchasing experience in these physical stores. And of course, we were an online, digitally native business. And so kind of thinking about bringing the identical experience online was, a kind of a simple concept for us to go after. But I think really spending the time in those stores allowed us to see that there really is an opportunity to build, an end-to-end online optical retail experience that not only rivaled the, stores and chains that you've heard about for many years and you see on every corner in your city and, have TV commercials, but really build a better experience. Of course, in our mind, it's a better experience when we can reduce friction. And that meant time and accessibility and ease of actually getting the products, right? Online versus offline. Pricing around a lot of the stuff, physical retail stores have a lot of costs that online businesses may not have. And the audience or the consumer base they can attract is a more, regionally specific one where we have access to the entire country. And so we were able to do a lot of the same things and bring costs down, but really also kind of, present product and service to individuals in an easier way. And I think, we make a custom product for every single prescription lens order. And, there are hundreds of permutations of lens options that I think consumers traditionally didn't really think through or have to think through because they'd purchase from the doctor. And so I think we've, definitely done a fair amount of education through the experience we've created that has really opened individuals' eyes up to, maybe I was overpaying, or maybe I was getting, coatings I didn't need, or, now maybe Lensabl is offering me everything that I used to not know if I needed or was too expensive for me, but they're offering it all as kind of a standard, set of coatings or standard practice. So, I think over time, we've built out this much more extensive offering, right? We sell contacts, we sell frames, we sell lenses for your frames. We've got this suite of digital kind of measurement apps and technologies that really emulate that in-store experience. And, I think that had helped us continue to impress investors. Obviously, the sales have to come with it, but, we've been fairly efficient in being able to generate new customers at a reasonable price and be able to generate a fair amount of revenue off of them. And where we've gotten to today, and really about a year ago was when we kind of realized we were onto something pretty big, and our idea from being this kind of end-to-end one-stop shop for all things optical online really had an additional opportunity, right? There was a larger aspect or larger kind of goal that we were able to go after. And that was really entering the vision benefit space. And that is kind of, where we're focused heavily today. And we've just released a new product called Lensabl Plus. And it really is, our answer to, or our competitive solution, alternative, what have you, to traditional vision insurance plans. And so I say all this in that, and I'll give you some more details on it in a second, but I say all this in that we've kind of understood what the investor world was looking for, the things that would excite them. And it did require us to continue to innovate, continue to expand our offering. And, fast forward 4.5 years to where we are today, there's a trend in, the venture world of kind of benefit tech or insure tech. And we now can play in that space. We are an e-commerce company at heart, but we're also a technology company. We've built software from scratch that has usability, not just necessarily for our e-commerce store, but also potentially for others in the space. And so, I think you got to continue to innovate. You have to continue to, strive for, you don't have to every week or every month be changing your business model or pivoting, but I think you have to, look at a really, really big picture these days, because in other categories and other types of, businesses there, you're seeing, huge numbers, both in the public and private markets. And that's what's exciting investors, opportunities of that size. And so, for us, it just took a little longer to kind of understand what that opportunity could be for us. But, investors have kind of watched us along the way. And now we're starting to have some of the interest from individuals we maybe didn't have 2 years ago when we were, just a little bit more narrow of an offering.
Great. And so what is the growth rate of this sector? How fast is it growing?
So, as I mentioned earlier, e-commerce penetration for vision care materials was about 25% last year, which was up from, just low double-digit percentage the prior year. So it's growing incredibly quickly. I think optometrists and optical retail stores, at least during the pandemic, a lot of those had to either, shut down for a short period of time or even shut down for good. Again, if it was a retail store, probably had a little bit more trouble staying open. But, a lot of touching of products in those stores and things that were really just, very kind of COVID unfriendly, if you will. And so, we believe that the amount of time that people were unable to kind of go back to the places that they were normally, used to going to purchase these products, either we did a really good job of kind of, showing up where they searched or kind of finding them online, or, they found us because in their own searches, because really they needed that next box of contacts, or they needed to swap out their lenses because they couldn't see. It gave enough time for people, we think, to really get comfortable with, buying these products online. And it's not that every person is going to be comfortable, buying new glasses online or contacts. And, fortunately, it's a big enough pie that we think, a small percentage is what's needed to make a really big business. But we believe that, the e-commerce penetration will continue to grow at double-digit percentages year over year in vision care, for both buying materials and also performing certain services like vision tests and different measurements that, traditionally required you to go in store or in person.
It seems like this industry has traditionally been dominated by a few key players. How many companies are engaged in it now that it's going digital?
Yeah, it's funny. You are starting to see a handful of, new entrants into the space in the kind of product selling side. And I would say that's just because of, truly how simple it is these days to, launch an online e-commerce store, right, on Shopify or WooCommerce or any of the kind of more templatized commerce platforms. Look, the big conglomerates, many of them have acquired, digital properties over the years. And that's kind of how they've become big conglomerates, not necessarily by building everything in-house, but by acquiring, many small and large businesses. And to their credit, that is why they've been so difficult to compete with. But again, when you are such a large company, it just becomes a little bit more difficult to be as agile, move as quickly. Decisions have to go through the ranks of corporate America in many instances. And that does make it harder to, change business model, right? When so much of your kind of historical business has been around physical retail presences. And that's kind of the one biggest issue. And so while I think a lot of the big companies are very much so, trying to transform digitally, they have specific groups called digital transformation groups. A young startup that can be agile, that, is thinking about new, potentially wacky ideas, but ones that they can test and get to market really quickly like us, really has an opportunity. I don't want to say an upper hand because these are still massive, massive organizations you're competing with, but really has an opportunity to, gain some market share in whatever their specific category is. And I think we've started to do that. Warby Parker clearly has gained a sizable amount of market share, and there are a handful of other companies that are doing unique things that are still privately held, so I think we're going to continue to see it. But I do think that, in the coming years, a lot of the big organizations are going to put a bigger focus on digital and, either by building or buying companies that exist. And that's just kind of what we've seen in this industry historically.
So what are the challenges in creating a new market segment like the digital one? What are you up against when you do that?
Yeah. So for us, the thing that we were up twofold against some very, difficult things when we launched lens replacement. For one, it was a brand new concept. So, the education to the consumer, and really getting consumers to do anything new that they've truly never done before, which is buy lenses for their own frame online, is just difficult, right? And so that was definitely, and still continues to be, an uphill battle that we, climb, and it requires lots and lots of education. But I would say for our business specifically, prescription lenses are a custom product for every single product that's made, right? Which is very, very different than frames, which is very different than, shoes or furniture, right? And things that traditionally are manufactured, let's just say overseas, but you get samples, you approve the samples, the manufactured runs are created and then sent to your warehouse. And, it's very simple. You kind of put them on the website, you sell them, and people know what to expect, right? What they're getting, and everything has already been made. For us, making prescription lenses, it's a unique custom medical product with a variety of different, measurements that oftentimes are hard to read on the prescription paper that's sent in. And so, it's a challenge because people's vision, every single individual in the whole world has different vision. And right. And, you're not going to have exactly the same axis measurement or, cylinder measurement. And the frame that you send into us is a unique shape compared to the other frame that somebody else sends in. And so again, there's a lot of customization for each individual product that just makes our business a little bit more difficult to operate than most others. And I would then also say, even oftentimes, a customer will get their lenses back, and not oftentimes, but from time to time, they'll get their lenses back. All the measurements look like they were done correctly through our supply chain. And, it just doesn't work for the customer. And that is going to happen. And so sometimes, I guess where I'm going with that is, even when you do everything right, it may not 100% of the time be right. And this is not any different than what the optometry, industry experiences or the retail store experiences. So, I would say the kind of a new segment, a new buying behavior is just difficult and takes time and money and cost, to really educate consumers on. And then a custom product has its own set of challenges, both of which is what we started out with rather than kind of layered that in down the road. But I think we were stronger and built a stronger foundation for it. And fortunately, I kind of think of ourselves as, albeit a very, small but growing market or category, we are the kind of category leader in lens replacement.
So when you talk to investors, how do you describe your position in this new landscape? Are you on the premium side or the low-cost side, or how do you communicate where you're going to land in it, since it is a new segment and it's still forming?
Yeah. So, I think, and kind of as I've mentioned, we've definitely expanded our offering and the kind of branding and community and marketing message of what we do, from just being the lens replacement business to being the online optical store to now being the modernized vision benefits platform. And all of the things we've sold along the way still exist. All of the kind of functionality that one can encounter when they come to our site all still exists. But, really going forward, the way that we are branding ourselves and communicating, our message to investors is that we are modernizing vision benefits and vision care. And we're doing that through, administering our own plans that are custom to individual consumers, specifically to the contact that they are looking for, specifically to the type of lenses that they're looking for. And really this concept of modernizing a benefit category or an insurance category we've seen success in in dental and in health and a handful of other categories, that has seemingly picked up and worked really well. And truly that is what we're doing. So, I would say for the last couple of years, we've kind of pitched ourselves as the one-stop shop for all things optical online, and very similar to, a nationwide optical retail chain, but a digital version. We've now kind of taken, this next approach and expanding that ability into what many think of as vision insurance, although it is truly benefits and a benefit plan more than it is an insurance plan, but really modernizing that. And that means, right, the experience is digital. That means removing a lot of the friction and complexities associated with transparency into what's covered. And at the end of the day, that really means, lowering out-of-pocket cost requirements for individuals and still offering them a good to very premium experience and premium quality products.
Great. Well, in the last few minutes that we have here, what else should we cover that we haven't?
I think we've gotten pretty thorough. I do want to let everyone know about our really exciting new vision benefits platform and offering. It is called Lensabl Plus. Next time you are thinking about vision coverage for the year, a vision plan, we will become an option in due time for employers to make available to their employees. But for anybody who does not currently participate in an employer or group sponsored plan, and may either have an individual vision plan or, kind of just pieces together their vision care, buying from different vendors online and offline. I really think we've built a online solution that is going to save you, primarily save you hundreds, if not thousands of dollars per year out of pocket for some of those more extreme cases, is going to really remove a lot of the friction associated with having to go to multiple vendors or locations for different products, and is going to kind of be a really simple and effective solution for you to make sure that you're kind of covered for all the vision care requirements that one might have that wears contacts and glasses on an annual basis, without really having to be concerned of where do I go, how much is it going to cost, what am I going to get reimbursed, all that stuff that has traditionally made vision insurance plans really difficult for people to ingest. So we'd love for people to come and kind of explore that on the website. And we are excited to put this offering out into the world.
Great. Well, how best for listeners to get back in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm, personally available on Twitter and Instagram. It's, first and last name at Andy Bilinsky. I'm always happy to chat, but lensabl.com, Lensabl.com is where you can really find out all the information about us and begin the buying process for really anything that we sell. Explore Lensabl Plus. And, we are at Lensabl on all the major social networks, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. And we are, happy to chat with anyone, answer any questions at any time.
Great. Well, we'll put those in the show notes. I want to thank you for joining us today and hope to have you back for a follow-up soon.
I thank you so much for the time and the chat. It was great.
Investor Connect helps investors interested in startup funding. In this podcast series, experienced investors share their experience and advice. You can learn more at investorconnect.org. Paul T. Martin is the director of Investor Connect, which is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to the education of investors for early-stage funding. All opinions expressed by Hall and podcast guests are solely their own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Investor Connect. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions.